So I don't know anybody that expects to get fired in their 50s. I certainly didn't, but I found myself in that exact situation. So after decades of climbing the corporate ladder and doing, everything that you're supposed to, I was relatively successful. And I thought, I was on track to finish out my career toward my retirement and everything was going to be fine until it wasn't. One day I found myself fired. And, even though I saw it coming, it was still really terrifying, to be honest with you guys. But here's the twist. What I learned was that being fired actually turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. And today I'm going to share with you why. So even before that day, I knew that I was running on empty. The endless meetings, the corporate politics, always being asked to do more with less. I knew I was burned out. And I think that you guys probably know what I'm talking about, right? And I remember sitting in this meeting and it was one of those all day, strategy sessions where we were trying to determine, what's the path forward, what we going to work on and really set for our goals for the next, quarter or 6 months or whatever it was. And I remember sitting there thinking, how many of these meetings have I been in? And how many times have we set these goals? And it just seemed like it was Groundhog Day again, right? You're probably going to meet one or two, but inevitably what would happen is, the economic climate would change or something would happen or sales weren't there. And so you'd end up finding yourself just cutting more expense or cutting back on the things that you wanted to do. So to me, it seemed like this endless loop of, like I said, at Groundhog Day, it was just the same thing over and over. And I kind of came to realize that at that point, I don't think it was ever going to get better. But here's the thing, when and like me, I don't know if you've built your entire identity around your career and who I was in the corporate world, I was kind of ignoring some of the signs of burnout. I was getting short with my family. I was, I think I leaned back on that security and stability of that corporate job a little too much. And I let it define who I was. And as it turned out, it really wasn't who I was. And that stability and security that I thought I was getting really wasn't worth the trade-off in the long run. So then it happened, right? I was fired. I'll never forget the day that it happened. It was just a normal work day. I had a calendar full of meetings. And then all of a sudden, a quick little half an hour touch point showed up on my calendar by one of my colleagues. And that wasn't unusual, so I really didn't think much of it. Sign into the meeting, and of course the first person that I see on the meeting is one of the corporate counsel folks that I had worked with. And I knew this individual because I had just finished laying off a considerable portion of that particular organization. And so, I don't want to go through the whole story with you guys, but long story short, an individual that was my colleague spent 5 minutes reading a script to me that basically said they had lost confidence in my ability to do my job, and they were dismissing me as of that day. And I got to spend the rest of the time, kind of talking through with the corporate lawyer everything that I already knew, because they had already coached me on how to say all of these things to people that I had just let go. So really, really crappy feeling. And I think nobody really wants to be in that position, but I vividly remember how I felt immediately afterwards. And the first feeling was that of just disappointment. Like I said, I saw this coming. I just didn't know when. And so I was disappointed that I was actually right. And then I felt kind of anger. I was really angry at what this organization had made me go through, the steps that I had to take. I thought I was doing the right thing. I had really affected a lot of people's lives, and here it was happening to me as well. So again, the first thing I felt was really disappointment, but then it really kind of turned to anger. So I'll be honest, those first few days afterwards were really rough. And like I said, I've been laid off before. This was not the first time that this has happened to me, but I really found myself kind of wondering, oh my gosh, what now? And so, and I'm sure that a lot of you can relate, at an older age, I read all of the stories about how it's becoming more and more difficult for people that are, nearing the ends of their careers to really get new jobs. And, I have a lot of colleagues that have been looking for work as well, and people that I know, and it's taking forever for everybody, especially in this economy. And so I really went through this period of just trying to figure out, what is next for me? I was worried about money. I was worried about health insurance. I was worried about what people would think. I was just, there was a lot of worry there. But yet in the background, there was something else that was kind of brewing inside of me as well. And there was a part of me that felt this, I don't know how to describe it other than freedom. It was like, I have more choices now, right? There are multiple things that I could do instead of just going back to the same old thing that I had been doing forever. So there was this growing feeling of relief and somewhat being free that I just couldn't quite escape. And it was really refreshing, actually. So once I kind of embraced that feeling of, hey, I don't really fear getting up on a Monday morning anymore, that really led to a self-discovery process. And it really led to me wondering, well, what could I do next? And what I really found was embracing some of that, that feeling of being scared and that feeling of renewal all at the same time. It was kind of the catalyst for me. So I found myself leaning into that detour. I found that it was a bit of a way for me to heal a little bit and then recharge. And through that, I started to get ideas. And those ideas are leading to all sorts of things where I get to reinvent myself and really define what this next chapter is. In fact, I'm calling it my third chapter. And so what I found was I didn't have a 5-year plan. I didn't have everything all mapped out. What I had was a couple of ideas, and I took the first step and I leaned into some of the things that I loved. One was travel. I have a passion for travel, and it's really something that I wanted to do. And that passion and path led me to creating my own small business. And we're probably going to spend some time talking about that on this channel, so come along with me. But this is really the story of turns out the detour was the damn point. There is life after getting fired in your 50s. You just need to lean into it, listen to what your body and your mind are actually telling you, and use it as an opportunity to reinvent yourself. If that's what you feel that you need to do, it is possible, and I'm living proof of that. So through this journey, I've learned a few things along the way. First off, getting fired doesn't define you. It actually frees you. Number two, you don't need a perfect plan to start over. You just need to take a couple of steps. Number three, reinvention in your 50s isn't crazy. It's actually really courageous. And number four, your ego is probably going to take a hit, but your ego probably needed that hit in order for you to move forward in whatever it is in your life that you want to do. So getting fired in my 50s wasn't the end of the story. In fact, it was the detour that I didn't know that I needed. So if you find yourself at similar crossroads, you're burned out, you're stressed out, you're feeling pushed out, overlooked, or if you're just looking for something different, I hope my story reminds you that starting over in midlife can be scary, but it is possible, and it can be the best thing that's ever happened. So one of the things that is a side benefit of getting fired is that I have a little more time now, and I get to do things like make cupcakes for my nephew. These are Cookie Monsters. Thanks for watching.